It started with a missed bus, just an ordinary night that should have ended there. But when she turned to me and said, "Good, then walk me home," everything changed. I didn't know that one small choice would lead to the most unexpected love of my life. Sometimes fate doesn't arrive on time, and that's exactly how it finds you. Hello, you're watching Trulene. Real stories with real twists. Let's get started. I'm Tyler, 24, born and raised an hour outside the city in a place where the coffee is better than the buses. I rent a small studio above a laundromat on Maple Street. Most days you'll find me behind the counter at Finch and Bean, a campus-adjacent coffee shop where I steam milk, learn too much about people from their orders, and walk home smelling like espresso. I'm not an auto mechanic, not an IT, not a warehouse guy. I'm a barista who tries to get the foam right and my life a little less messy. That night had the kind of cold that sticks to your sleeves. My shift ran late because the student paper rushed in before close and begged for a last-minute carf. I locked up, counted the till twice, and jogged toward the stop at Elman 3. The last bus rumbled up as I crossed the corner, doors open like a dare. I waved, sprinted, nearly slipped. The driver looked at me, shrugged an apology only he could believe, and pulled away. Red taillights stretched into a line and disappeared. I let out a breath that turned white in the air. That's when I noticed her. She was standing under the flickering street lamp, a woman in a camel coat with a slim leather briefcase, hair tucked behind one ear. She had the tired look of someone who had smiled at too many meetings. She watched the bus leave, then looked at me like we were in on the same joke. "Good, then walk me home," she said, calm, like it was obvious. I blinked. "Are you serious?" She nodded toward the sidewalk. "It's only 10 blocks, and you look like you could use the exercise." I laughed because it came out easy. I was already exercising. That was a full sprint. We fell in a step. The neighborhood at that hour was quiet enough to hear our shoes. Storefront gates were down, neon signs humming to themselves. She held her briefcase close against the cold. "I'm Tyler," I offered. "Malene," she said, with an I, not an E. "What's the difference?" "People who spell it wrong usually mispronounce it too." "Duly noted, so Malene with an I. Do you often recruit strangers for night walks?" She smiled sideways. "Only the ones who look like they know how to keep pace." A beat passed, gentle. I told her I worked at Finch and Bean, pointed back toward the glow we could just make out over the rooftops. She told me she worked in marketing at a small agency near the courthouse. Campaigns, deadlines, small fires that had to look like perfect plans. "What's your read on me from a marketing perspective?" I asked. "Target audience or lost cause?" She considered. "You lead with humor to hide nerves. You're observant. You said with an eye back to me, which means you listen. And your laces are double knotted, which is either practical or anxious." "It's winter," I said. "I'm not losing a shoe to a slush puddle." We crossed Pine where the street widened and the wind pushed at our coats. She asked what people's coffee orders say about them. I told her the guy who orders a triple espresso and stares out the window is either writing a novel or a breakup text. The woman who gets decaf at 8:00 p.m. is lying to herself about sleep, and the regular who switches from vanilla to caramel is about to move apartments. "What did you switch?" she asked. "From thinking I had to leave to thinking maybe I can build something here," I said, surprising myself. "This town gets better when you notice it." She nodded like she knew exactly what I meant. We talked about rent that sneaks up, about the way autumn makes even empty lots look cinematic, about parents who call at inconvenient times. Her phone buzzed once. She glanced, let it go dark, slipped it back into her coat. We walked past the floor's shop, the one with the hand-painted sign and buckets left empty overnight. A cat watched us from the display window, as if we owed it an explanation. A couple blocks later, she pointed up. "That's me, third floor corner unit with the lopsided blinds. Don't judge." "I wouldn't dare. My blinds are a public safety hazard." We stopped at the stoop. The street lamp here worked better. And for the first time, I caught the color of her eyes, that hazel that changes when it catches light. "Thanks for the company, Tyler," she said, shifting her briefcase. "You're not as shy as you look." "Only when I'm trying to catch buses," I said. My hands were cold, but my chest felt warm in that embarrassing way. "Can I see you again?" maybe when I'm not out of breath. She looked at the door, then back at me. The pause wasn't heavy, it was careful. I come by Finch and Beans sometimes, she said. If the barista there recommends something other than a safe latte, I might listen. I make a mean honey cardamom cap. It's not shy either. She smiled. Then write it on a napkin so I can ask for it. And give me your number in case I forget the name. I pulled a pen from my coat because I'm the kind of person who carries pens. I wrote my number slowly to make sure my hand didn't do that shaking thing. She took the napkin, slid it into her pocket, then held out her phone. Just in case you write like a doctor, she said. I typed my number anyway. She tapped hers into my contacts as Malene with an eye. The hallway light inside clicked on when someone on the second floor opened their door. For a second, we stood in the soft spill of it. I thought about asking for a hug, then decided letting the moment breathe was better. Good night, Tyler. Good night, Malene. She climbed the stairs. I waited until I heard her keys and the faint sound of a lock turning. Then I started back the way we came. Hands in pockets, breath clouding the air. The streets felt less empty. I passed the bus stop again and looked at the posted schedule, the one I knew by heart. Missing that bus should have felt like losing a race. Instead, it felt like tripping into the right lane. Halfway home, my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. Honey cardamom cap, tomorrow after 6. If your phone passes inspection, I typed back before my smile could fade. My phone is union approved. See you after 6. When I reached my building, the laundromat below was still thundering. I climbed the stairs, unlocked my door, and laughed at how loud the apartment seemed in the quiet. I set my coat on the chair, washed espresso off my hands, and leaned my forehead to the cool window glass. Somewhere 10 blocks away, a woman with a tired smile and a careful pause was hanging up her coat too. The next morning, the shop smelled like roasted almonds and rain. I'd barely finished wiping down the counter when I saw her through the fogged-up window. Malene in a gray trench coat, holding her phone like she was pretending to scroll. I didn't expect to see her again so soon. When she came in, she glanced at the chalkboard menu and said, "I'm here for the barista who promised a honey cardamom cappuccino." I grinned. "That guy's unreliable, but I'll cover for him." She took a seat by the window while I made her drink. My hands worked on instinct, but my mind was somewhere else. On her voice, her calmness, how easily she'd made last night feel less like a coincidence and more like something that was meant to happen. When I set the cup in front of her, she inhaled the steam and smiled. "This is dangerously good. You sure you're just a barista?" "Depends who's asking," I said, leaning against the counter. We talked until the line built up and I had to work again. When my shift ended an hour later, she was still there, half-finished cup in front of her, staring out at the street. "You waiting for another bus?" I asked, hanging up my apron. "No," she said. "Just not ready to go home yet." I sat down across from her. "Rough day already?" She laughed quietly. "You could say that. I work in marketing, deadlines, revisions, clients who think they know better. I spent the last year trying to fix a relationship while fixing campaigns. Neither turned out great." I didn't push. There was a pause, comfortable but heavy, and then she said, "He and I lived together for 5 years. I moved out 6 months ago. I thought I'd feel free. Mostly I just feel quiet." I nodded. Sometimes quiet's better than pretending. She looked up, and for a second there was a softness in her eyes, something fragile that caught me off guard. "You talk like someone older than 24. "I make coffee for people twice my age every day," I said. "It rubs off." We walked out together. The streets were drying after the morning rain, the air smelling faintly of wet asphalt and pastry from the bakery next door. "So," she said, adjusting her coat, "do you always play therapist for your customers?" "Only the interesting ones," I said. "Everyone else just gets caffeine." She smiled but didn't answer. We walked in silence until she stopped near the park. "I'm not really looking for anything," she said suddenly. "I just want peace, no drama, no promises, just normal." "I get that," I said, "but normal overrated. Sometimes it's just another word for lonely." She turned toward me, eyes narrowing in amusement. "You're dangerously good with words for a guy who serves coffee. I overcompensate for the bad tips." That made her laugh, really laugh this time. the kind of sound that makes strangers turn their heads. We ended up sitting on a park bench watching a dog chase leaves. She told me about growing up near Seattle, about how her parents still called every Sunday, even though she always ran out of things to say. I told her about my small apartment, my failed attempt to play guitar, and how I'd once driven 3 hours just to see the ocean at night. Why at night, she asked. Fewer people. The waves sound louder when no one's talking over them. She nodded slowly, like she understood exactly what I meant. The wind picked up, blowing a strand of her hair across her face. Without thinking, I reached out and brushed it back. My fingers barely touched her skin, but it felt like electricity shot through me. She didn't move away. You know, she said softly, you make me forget how tired I am. I wanted to say something clever, but my throat tightened. The world shrank to that single moment. Her eyes, the way the light caught them, the closeness. I leaned in slowly, testing the air between us. For half a second, I thought she'd meet me halfway. Instead, she took a step back, her smile trembling. Don't rush it, Tyler. She said, you'll ruin the magic. I swallowed, nodded. I'm not rushing, just walking you home, remember? That made her smile again. You really don't give up, do you? Not when I miss the bus. We walked in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was quiet in the way people get when they've already said too much and nothing else needs to be added. When we reached her street, she stopped at the corner instead of her door. I'll see you around, she said. You will, I replied. She hesitated, then added, You're different, Tyler. I'm not sure if that's good or dangerous yet. Maybe both, I said. She nodded, gave a small wave, and crossed the street. I stood there watching her disappear into the blur of headlights, feeling like something invisible had just begun to shift. That night, back in my apartment, I couldn't focus on anything. Her laugh echoed in my head. Her words kept replaying, Don't rush it. I didn't know what she meant exactly, but I knew this. Whatever was happening between us wasn't ordinary. It didn't feel like a crush or a coincidence. It felt like a slow current pulling me somewhere I didn't plan to go. I fell asleep, still hearing her voice in the back of my mind, calm and certain. Good, then walk me home. The next week crawled by slower than usual. The shop felt emptier even when it was full. Malene hadn't texted since that night in the park, and I kept catching myself checking my phone like some kid waiting for a message that might never come. Every time the bell over the cafe door rang, my chest tightened for half a second, then eased again when it wasn't her. By Wednesday, the weather had turned. The sky stayed gray from morning to night, and the streets shimmered with that constant drizzle that never really stopped. I told myself she was busy, that adults had jobs, meetings, and lives bigger than one week's connection. But the silence still nodded at me. Friday evening, as I was closing up, I caught a glimpse of her outside the window. She wasn't looking inside. She was standing under an umbrella near the crosswalk, talking to a man in a navy coat. He had that expensive confidence, clean shoes, slicked hair, phone in hand. When he reached out to touch her arm, she didn't pull away right away. My gut tightened. Then the light changed and they crossed the street together. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I opened the cafe early just to keep busy. The first customers trickled in, all half awake and polite. I smiled, took orders, made drinks I didn't remember making. By noon, the sky broke open with real rain. I was wiping down the counter when I heard the door open. She stood there soaked, her umbrella hanging limp by her side, her hair stuck to her cheeks, her eyes red like she'd been crying long before she got caught in the rain. Hey, I said softly. Hi, she breathed. Can I sit? Of course. I grabbed a towel and a cup. You look like you lost a fight with the weather. Something like that, she said, voice trembling as she wrapped the towel around her shoulders. I shouldn't have come here. I just didn't know where else to go. I poured her a coffee. No cardamom this time, just plain and strong. She stared at the steam for a while before she said it. That man you saw last night, my ex, he showed up at my office, said he wanted to talk. I nodded slowly, staying quiet. He said he misses me, that he's changed, that I'm being stubborn. He drove me home, and I let him. Then I realized halfway there that I was crying for all the wrong reasons. She looked up, eyes glistening. I don't want to go back, Tyler, but I don't know how to stop feeling like I owe him closure. I didn't have any clever line for that. I just moved around the counter, grabbed my coat, and held it out to her. She blinked, confused. Come on, I said, you're freezing. Let's walk. We stepped out into the drizzle. The rain softened the world. No horns, no chatter, just the sound of drops hitting asphalt. For a while, we walked without saying anything. Why are you being so nice to me? She asked suddenly. Because you don't need to explain anything, I said. Sometimes you just need someone to walk beside you until you remember how to stand still. She stopped on the corner and turned toward me. That's not fair. You make it sound easy. It's not, I said. But neither is pretending you're fine when you're not. The traffic light flickered from red to green, washing her face in soft color. She looked smaller than usual, vulnerable, like someone holding herself together out of habit. I wanted to reach for her hand but didn't. Instead, I stood there until she took a shaky breath and said, I hate that he still makes me feel guilty. Then let him carry that guilt, I said. You've done your part. She let out a small, broken laugh. You really believe that? I do. We kept walking. The city looked different through the rain, muted, forgiving. We passed a bookstore with fogged-up windows, a florist closing early, a kid splashing through puddles in boots too big for him. Malene slowed near a bench under a tree that barely blocked the rain. This is where I usually stop, she said. I like to sit here when I need to think. We sat for a while. The only sound was the rain on leaves. Then she whispered, You ever feel like you're living between chapters? Like the story moved on, but you didn't all the time? I said, but sometimes that's where the best parts start. She looked at me, really looked, and for the first time I saw a flicker of relief in her expression. Not joy, not peace, but the quiet beginning of both. The rain finally started to ease. She handed me back my coat, though she still looked cold. Thanks for walking me, she said, anytime. When we reached her building, she hesitated before unlocking the door. You shouldn't have to fix me, Tyler. I'm not trying to, I said. I just don't want you to walk home alone. Her eyes softened. You always say the right thing, don't you? I'm better at listening than talking. She smiled faintly, then disappeared inside. I stood there until the door clicked shut, watching the ripples and the puddles fade as the rain stopped completely. For the first time in days, the air smelled like something clean. That night, I sat by my window, coat still damp from the walk, watching the street lights flicker against the wet pavement. My phone buzzed once, a message from her. Thank you for today. I didn't know how much I needed someone until you showed up. I stared at the words, unsure how to reply. Then I typed back, anytime, even if you don't miss the bus. The following week, the rain gave way to cold, dry evenings. I hadn't seen Malene in days, but we still texted short messages. Careful ones. She'd ask if I'd slept or if the shop was busy. I'd ask if she'd eaten or if her workload had slowed down. It wasn't flirtation anymore. It was something quieter, steadier, like two people finding balance after a storm. One Wednesday night around 8, she texted, Are you home? I was still cleaning the espresso machine. Just closing up. What? My laptop's acting weird. I might need a tech expert. I smiled. That's not me. You'll do, she replied. When I got to her place, she'd already set 2 mugs on the table. Tea for her, coffee for me. Her apartment looked like her. Organized, warm, full of little details that made it feel alive. Framed photos, soft light, a faint scent of jasmine. The patient's over here, she said, gesturing to her laptop. I bent down beside it. You know half of these issues are fixed by restarting. I already tried that, she said, crossing her arms twice. I pressed a few keys. The screen blinked back to life. See, it just needed someone to believe in it. She gave me a half smile. So, coffee whisperer and computer therapist. What's next on your resume? I shrugged. Professional listener, part-time worrier. She leaned against the counter, studying me for a long moment. You really do listen, don't you? I tried to. Silence settled between us. It wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that made everything else fade out. Then she said quietly, Can I ask you something honest? Always. She hesitated. Why are you doing this being here helping me? What do you get out of it? I looked at her. You don't ask for help, Malene. You only let people in when you've run out of ways to stand on your own. Maybe I just want to make sure you don't forget you don't have to. Her expression softened. That's not fair. You make me sound broken. No, I said gently. Just tired of carrying too much alone. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she walked to the window, watching the city lights flicker below. You know, when I left him, I thought I'd feel strong. I told myself I was starting over. But some days I feel like I'm still waiting for permission to be happy again. I stepped closer. You don't need anyone's permission. She turned, eyes glassy. You make it sound so simple. It's not, but maybe it can be easier when you're not doing it alone. Her breath hitched a little. She looked at me, really looked, and something shifted in the air. The distance that had been there for weeks vanished in one quiet heartbeat. Tyler, she said softly, almost like a warning. I'm not saying anything, I murmured. But neither of us moved away. Her eyes searched mine for hesitation and didn't find any. She reached up, fingers trembling just slightly, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. I felt my chest tighten. Then she whispered, You don't have to be perfect for me. Just honest. I swallowed hard. That's easy. I like you, Malene. I liked you since the night you made missing the bus sound like fate. She exhaled slowly and a single tear rolled down her cheek. Not from sadness, but from release. I wiped it away with my thumb, and that small gesture was enough. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against mine. We didn't kiss right away. We just stood there breathing the same air, letting the world narrow down to one quiet living room and two people who'd finally stopped pretending not to need each other. When she finally closed the distance, it wasn't rushed or as dramatic. It was calm, certain, the kind of closeness that concludes after you've said everything that matters without words. Time slowed. The room felt warmer. The only sound was her faint, steady breath against my neck. When she pulled back, her eyes were clearer than I'd ever seen them. That's the first time someone said that to me, she whispered. What? That I don't have to be perfect. You never did, I said. You just needed someone to remind you. She smiled through her tears and touched my cheek. You really have no idea what you're doing to me, do you? I'm starting to, I said quietly. We stayed there on the couch side by side for what felt like hours. No plans, no promises, just the soft hum of the city outside her window and the comfort of knowing that for once neither of us had to fill the silence. When I finally stood to leave, she followed me to the door. You don't have to go, she said. I looked at her, unsure what she meant. Not like that, she added quickly. Just stay for a bit longer. It feels easier when you're here. So I stayed. We sat on the floor, leaning against the couch, talking about nothing. Movies we liked, places we'd never been, the way the city always smells different after rain. By the time I left, it was almost midnight. Outside, the air was cold and clean. She stood in the doorway, her hair loose, a quiet peace on her face. Thank you, she said, for fixing your laptop, for not running away. I smiled. Guess I learned from the bus. She laughed softly, then whispered, Good night, Tyler. Good night, Malene. Walking home, I couldn't stop smiling. Something had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in the way a storm breaks and leaves the air clear. For the first time in a long while, I felt like both of us were finally walking towards something real. 6 months later, the wick looked different. Not louder or brighter, just steadier. The kind of steady that comes after you stop waiting for something bad to happen. Malene and I were living together now in a small apartment above a bakery that opened too early and smelled like fresh bread every morning. I'd left my old cafe for a new job managing a downtown coffee shop. She'd been promoted to lead strategist at her agency. We were both still learning how to balance our lives. But for the first time, it felt like we were on the same side of the fight. It wasn't perfect. Some mornings she'd wake up quiet, staring out the window for too long before saying anything. I'd brew her coffee and wait. Other days, I'd come home exhausted, my shirt smelling like espresso and steam. And she'd slide her arms around me from behind, whispering, We're okay. Those two words meant more than anything else. We didn't talk about her ex anymore. There was no need to. Whatever part of her life he'd occupied was gone. Not erased, but finished. She'd stopped apologizing for her past, and I'd stopped being afraid I'd have to compete with it. On a chilly evening in early spring, she texted me while I was closing the shop. Meet me where it all started. I smiled at the screen, already knowing exactly what she meant. When I got there, the streetlight was buzzing just like the first night. The same cracked pavement, the same faded bus sign. She was standing there with her hands in her pockets, hair pulled up, scarf loose around her neck. The bus schedule still hung crooked on the pole. J'avoue, I said, walking up to her. She turned and smiled, that same easy, calm smile that had caught me off guard months ago. You're late again. I didn't miss the bus this time, I said. Good, she said softly. Then you can walk me home again. We started walking side by side. The air was crisp but not cold, filled with that early spring smell of damp earth and something growing. The city was quieter than usual, almost like it was giving us space to remember. You know, I said, if someone told me a missed bus would change my life, I'd have laughed. She looked up at me. And now I think maybe we never really miss what's meant for us. It just takes a different route. She slipped her hand into mine. That sounds like something a barista philosopher would say. I've been promoted, I said. Now I get paid to say things like that. She laughed, her head leaning against my shoulder for a moment. The sound of it, familiar, real, made something tighten in my chest. We passed the corner store where I used to buy cheap instant ramen, the park bench where we'd first sat and talked about broken things and new beginnings. The flower shop now open late with buckets of tulips outside. Every corner felt like a piece of our story left behind and somehow still alive. Halfway home, she stopped walking and turned to face me. The street light above us flickered again. Same as that night. You ever think about how different things could have been? She asked. Sometimes, I said, but then I stop. Because this, you, me, everything we built, this is exactly what I would have chosen. She nodded slowly, like she needed to hear it as much as I needed to say it. I used to think love had to be dramatic, she said. Loud, all fireworks and chaos. But this is better. It's quiet, it's honest. That's because you stopped looking for perfect, I said. You started looking for real. She smiled and somehow real found me. We kept walking. When we reached our building, the lights from the bakery below were still on. The old man who owned it waved through the glass. She waved back, then turned to me with that same playful look she had the night we met. So, she said, do we just go upstairs like normal people? Or do we pretend we're strangers again? I'll take option 2, Maya, I said. She laughed. All right, stranger. Walk me home. We climbed the stairs together. Inside, the apartment was warm, the lights soft. She kicked off her shoes and curled up on the couch while I hung our coats. What are you thinking? I asked. That I'm finally home, she said simply, and that missing that bus was the best mistake either of us ever made. I walked over, sat beside her, and she rested her head on my shoulder. The city hummed quietly outside the bakery's ovens were below, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked completely at peace. After a while, she whispered, do you remember what you said that first night? I said a lot of nervous things that night, I said. You'll have to narrow it down. You said you wanted to see me again when you weren't out of breath. I smiled. Guess I kept my word. She looked up at me, eyes shining in the low light. Yeah, she said softly. You did. We sat there for a long time saying nothing. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything we'd been through. The walks, the rain, the laughter, the tears, the silence that used to mean uncertainty, but now just felt like peace. Eventually, she closed her eyes, still leaning against me. I watched the reflection of the city lights dance across the window, realizing how far we'd both come. Funny, I murmured half to myself, how missing one bus got me exactly where I was supposed to be. She smiled without opening her eyes, and I'm glad you did. Outside, the last bus of the night rolled past, its headlights sweeping briefly across our window before disappearing around the corner. But this time, neither of us had anywhere else to. In the hiss of a closing bus door and the chill of a missed ride, Tyler discovered that the most profound connections often arrive disguised as inconveniences. Malene, carrying the quiet ache of a 5-year heartbreak, showed him that healing isn't a solo sprint. It's a shared walk through drizzle, where one person's steady presence becomes another's permission to exhale. Their story is a gentle reminder. Love doesn't demand fireworks or flawless timing. It asks only for patience, for the courage to linger when the schedule says run, and for the honesty to say, I'm here, but thou I, without needing to fix everything. Sometimes the route you didn't choose leads exactly where your heart was waiting. What about you? What missed bus in your life? A delay, a detour, a moment you almost walked away from turned out to be the start of something beautiful. Share your story in the comments. Your words could be the street lamp someone else needs tonight. If this stirred your soul, smash that subscribe button and tap the bell. Trulene drops real twists every week to prove that the best chapters begin when the plan falls apart. See you on the next walk.